Welcome, my friends. Here we are. It is, what is the date today? It's the 15th of December 2021. Here we are, chat with Matt. Half an hour or so to talk about whatever might be interesting for you, whatever you might dictate. But seeing as no one at this point in time has written me in anything ahead of time, because that's just how it works, time. I don't have anything in the little notification, so I'm on my own until some people get on this call and give me some direction. So, what am I going to talk about? I could start with the obvious, that it is still a very intense time on this planet, and that many people are struggling a little, or maybe a bit more than a little, to find a degree of peace, slash acceptance, allowance, sense of comfort, really, mental, emotional and physical comfort in progressing through this time on this planet right now. There is so much getting stirred up to release. That's a good thing, right? Purification is always a good thing, but it's just not a comfortable thing. So I guess the very simple advice to progress through this time on this planet right now is to relax as best you can into acceptance that it's not easy to be progressing through this period at this time, right? Because as long as you have expectations that you should be doing better, and you're putting yourself in the wrong bucket for how intense it's feeling for you, or how poorly you feel that you are dealing with the intensity that you are feeling, right? You might feel like you are going mad, you might feel emotionally unstable, you might feel mentally unhinged, all of that stuff. You might be feeling physically broken. I know I'm carrying quite a few not insignificant discomforts in my body currently, for no good reason, right? Wake up with discomfort in your body, and you know, of course, the mind goes looking for reasons to justify or to blame, quote unquote, why you might be feeling so discordant, and that doesn't help. It just simply doesn't help. Sorry, I've got someone else, Marie, outside the room pointing and mouthing things at me, and of course I can't understand what she's saying. And I'm just sort of shaking my head because I've got no idea what she's on about. But anyway, that's life, isn't it? Things to stir us up. Where am I going? I know now what she was pointing at. She was pointing at the chickens to ask me whether I have fed them, and I have not. And so she's probably working that out when she's looking at the food bucket. I probably should have. So now I've got a mild pang of guilt that I probably should have fed the chooks, and I didn't enter my mind. Mainly because normally they're squawking if they need feeding. Normally they let me know. But obviously they didn't let me know. Anyway, I'm letting all that go. Moving back, what would any of you guys like to talk about? I'm very, very open to any particular question or request, whether that be a more general type thing, or whether it may be more specific to you and your situation. Doesn't really matter. I'm very happy to dance with any questions or requests, so please feel free to type those in. But yeah, the time right now is time to relax. And I mean that not in a way that we stop doing things, but in a way that we just stop being so intense around thinking that we should be doing things, and particularly around judging ourselves for not getting things done as well as we might like. It is traditionally, of course, like we're 2 odd weeks. What's the date today? 15th. So Christmas is, it's less than 2 weeks. God, it's 15th. So Christmas is in 10 days. So yeah, it's 1.5 weeks, just sort of catching up. Obviously, I don't get too contracted around this time of year, but a lot of people do. You know, in business, there's a lot of things winding up in certain businesses, and in other businesses, this is the time to make real money. So there's a lot of intensity in up-leveling, you know, advertising campaigns and trying to bring more people through. And then for others of us, there's the whole family thing, which can be intense, and Christmas and the holidays in general, for those who, you know, are not quote unquote celebrating Christmas, but celebrating other holidays at this time of year. Of course, holiday time is is a treacherous time for some, not all of us. Some of us find a very joyful time of year to bring family together and have a lot of fun. But with that, there are all sorts of expectations of how it should be. Holidays are, there's a projection out there that it should be a good time, and then many feel that it's not a good time, and therefore feel wrong for the fact that it's not a easy time or a good time for them and their family and whatever. Everyone has different situations in their lives. So please be willing to let go of the generalizations around the big fat shoulds. Please also be willing to let go of your common history or your personal history of how it has been for you in the past. Allow yourself to find freedom, right? Many of us are really, freedom is a big thing right now. I know tomorrow I'm going, to a march, a rally, a protest, not to fight against what we're not liking, but in my case, to advocate for what I am choosing, which is freedom of choice. And freedom in our society. And so that is, it's very topical right now. Freedom is a very topical topic, a very pertinent topic, because, we tend to become very, what's the right word? We tend to become much more aware of things when they're being taken away from us, right? Things that we take for granted all of a sudden become a little bit more obvious when there's a threat to them, whether that be our health, right? Most of us take our health for granted until we have a serious health crisis, or our freedom, or our relationship, etc., right? Our income, our finance, right? When you've got a job that you consider to be relatively stable, you're not too worried about money, until all of a sudden you realize your job isn't so stable, or even worse, you find you're out of a job at short notice, and then all of a sudden you understand what money stress is. This is it. We have a tendency to, of course, as humans, gloss over, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So if it's going okay, then our attention is not on that. That's not a wrongness. It's just a matter of fact. So for a long time, most of us in our societies, especially over here in New Zealand, and I know in many other parts of the world, we haven't really considered freedom to be a thing that we need to think about too much, because we've got it, right? Or at least we thought we had it. And now that, it's becoming obvious how tenuous our freedom is, and that our governments are not so much working for us, but working to their own agenda, regardless of what the people are desiring, right? Our elective representatives are behaving like authoritarian powers, which is not their role, right? As far as democracy has always been explained to me, it's not their role to be the authority. It's their role to be our elective representatives, and to listen to the people and to do the people's bidding, right? To work for the collective best good. And while some people might argue that they are doing that, it doesn't look like it from many of us's point of view. And of course, one of the interesting things with democracy is there'll always be the majority and the minorities. And so it's an interesting system. This is an interesting time to be alive on the planet right now, and many things, this is the point I want to make, many things are being challenged right now. Many of the things we've taken for granted have been challenged right now, and that is a good thing by and large. It is great to be challenged. It is great to be shaken out of our complacency, so that we can live life more fully, right? This is the thing. We tend to get in a track, right? We tend to be railroaded as humans generally, as creatures of habit. We tend to be railroaded, guided by this thing called efficiency, into living a half-life, right? Where we just go through the motions, because we're not challenged to actually really inquire more deeply into what it means to be alive. We don't get inspired into being more creative, more spontaneous, more creative and spontaneous. Those are probably the words I want to use. And instead we have been, by our societal education, lulled into complacency in this idea that if you follow the rules, then you will survive, right? That you will, and through this, you will eventually be successful. You will find your happiness, right? If you just follow the rules and accumulate money and buy the house and the car and find the partner and have the kids and etc., etc., etc. If you just follow the pathway, you will be led to your happiness for your retirement sort of thing idea. But you know, that's not doing it for most of us, especially those of you on this call, right? We have a much more expansive soul desire to be unique and expressive on this planet, and our current society has not been giving us those opportunities easily, right? And so, and there's a vast majority of us who have been lulled into this hypnotic trance of basically just going through the way that we've been educated until the pain inside of us gets significant enough to awaken us from that. And then we go through a crisis, midlife crisis or some other crisis where we start questioning the world. Some of us go mad during that. Some of us find some truth, and some of us basically medicate and settle back down into medicating in a variety of ways, not just you know, with prescription meds, but all sorts of different ways of dulling that disquiet within us and go back to living a more mundane life in a more numb state, and just seeing our days out. The massive opportunity that's in today's chaos, discordance, great unsettling, is that more and more of us are getting woken up to really question what is important to us. What is life all about? Because you know, just following the rules is getting less tenable and less attractive and more obviously manipulated, right? These rules are not. It's becoming more obvious to many of us that these rules are not really leading us towards our happiness, right? This pathway of you know, financial success, status success, survival success, reproduction success is not the pathway to our more expansive versions of happiness and contentment and self-expression, purpose on this planet. So it's a good thing. It's a good thing despite its discomfort. And despite all of the various fears that may be arising in you towards, you know, whether, you know, our society is really going down this pathway and will lose a great deal of freedom, or whether we're going down an extinction pathway, you know, or whether you've bought into climate change and gone down that pathway thinking, you know, we're really ruining the environment through our activity. There's so many different contentious points of view out there. Most of them are highly manipulated to put you into states of fear to harvest that energy from you. That is, you know, the truth, quote unquote, as I see it. And I know that sounds a bit conspiratorial, and I know that sounds a bit extreme, but that's my truth, and I'm here to candidly share what I feel to share. I am very happy to answer any questions and comments. So please, my friends, save me from my own ramblings and give me a focus. In the meantime, and guilt. Yeah, exactly, because guilty people are easy to control. Guilt is one of the best, guilt and shame are the best vibrations to instill in people to make them more easily controllable, right? And to keep them in fear, right? Guilty people are easy to keep in fear. Because they're not willing, they don't feel safe to stand up. Because if you're guilty, then you're concerned that you're going to be punished, right? You're going to be sentenced and punished. Hey, Sister Sylvie. So and Tracy. So yeah. So be aware that much of the narrative that's being projected around is to put people into guilt and fear, so that they are easy to control and don't live their most expansive life, right? Are continually scaling back how they can express themselves on the planet out of fear of being persecuted or by the authorities or by their peers, right? For fear of being cut out from the flock, from fear of being rejected, abandoned, judged, etc., getting it wrong. You know, there's so many different ways that we are heavily manipulated as a population. So be aware of all of that. Be willing to inquire. Don't take my truth as the truth. Just be willing to when you see a narrative that is being strongly emphasized by the media, right? You look at the racist stuff that was happening, the racism stuff, the Black Lives Matter stuff that was happening a couple of years before they brought COVID out. You look at that and how highly tenuous it was, and how, you know, it was designed to basically put guilt into many people. Right? If you're not actively speaking out that I'm anti-racist, then by default you are racist, right? You know, it was a very interesting campaign to guilt and shame and put fear into the population to create more and more division. When you look at those sorts of campaigns, you understand they're not happening for the greatest and best good of all. They're happening for a manipulated reason. Then that wasn't a campaign to promote healing in our society. That was a campaign to create more guilt, more fear, and more division. Right? You look at the climate change campaign, and it's rather similar in many ways. Yes, there are a lot of things that we could be doing to reduce pollution on this planet. I do believe we need to have a look at how our corporations the thing with the climate warming campaign is it puts all of the emphasis on the little consumer, you're the guilty one, and takes all of the emphasis off generally the corporations who are doing all sorts of things that create a lot of pollution. Pollution is a bad thing. Carbon dioxide, in my opinion, as you know, and I'm an engineer and I have studied this quite significantly because I did buy into it at first. But when you look at the real science around carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, it really isn't a big deal. And you know, I know the climate looks like it has warmed significantly. Well, the climate has warmed significantly. If you want to go down the rabbit hole and put your tinfoil hat on, there are so many different projects going on right now that are affecting our climate, right? People, scientists, governments are interfering with our weather patterns significantly with various different projects, scientific projects, you know, spraying the sky with all of that shit, different HARP technologies. That's happening, right? That's happening. I know it's hard to believe, and some people would say, well, yeah, but they're trying to do things that are good, right? They're spraying the sky to try and reflect more UV to keep it, you know, to keep it cooler on the planet, right? To you know, sort of trying to counteract the increase in carbon dioxide, etc., etc. Yeah, it's a deep rabbit hole. It's a deep rabbit hole, but you know, if you follow the money, it doesn't look good. And certainly you have no reason for feeling guilty for turning your lights on or driving your car somewhere. Then we look at a lot of the technologies that are coming out currently to combat carbon dioxide, you know, electric vehicles, etc., etc. And we look at actually the environmental impact on creating the batteries, etc., etc., that are currently used in electric vehicles. And you know, it's hard to find a balance point here where the equation looks good. You know, wind turbines, etc., etc. I think, you know, I'm a great fan of renewable energy, but I think a lot of what is being done is out of balance and is being driven by a corporate agenda, and is not potentially actually following good scientific process into what is actually the most beneficial for us all environmentally on this planet. And yet I don't freak out about that either, because I trust. Mother Earth is an amazing energy, and while I'm, you know, the sort of person who walks along the beach picking up litter, etc., I'm not one to get concerned that we're all doomed and that the human race is killing Earth. I don't believe Earth can be killed that easily. I am concerned that the human race might be killing itself. But again, I'm not even that concerned about that, because if we do kill ourselves, it's not a great big deal for us as a soul, right? Us as a being. We will go on, whether we wipe humanity off the face of the earth. And of course, as creator beings, we can reseed Earth with a form of human, again, as we have done in the past. It's not the first time that we've wiped ourselves off this planet. Anywho, going back a while, right? Millions of years, not hundreds of thousands of years or even tens of thousands of years like our history has us believe. So that's okay. So, and I don't want to take you right down the rabbit hole with that, and I don't want to stir you up more than you need to, and I don't really want to enter into a debate around all of this, because I'm not here to try and profess my truth as being the truth. What I would like you to do is start really looking at various narratives that are being various narratives that are being projected at you, and be willing to question them a little bit more deeply. Be willing to really go into your heart, get out of the fear-based narrative that's running in your head, and really inquire whether this story, this narrative, this agenda, what degree of truth does it have, and what is really your best option? What really feels aligned with you to operate at? What actions feel appropriate for you to engage with? I'm very mindful for myself to be careful with the activist mindset, right? To start fighting against things, or even fighting for things, right? I like to advocate for things that I feel are important, but I am very cautious around this propensity for the human ego to want to fight, to want to rise up and make itself right and something else wrong, and then to fight against what's wrong, to uphold what's right. In general, that feeds a darker agenda. Fight energy feeds a darker agenda. Now, I'm not saying that we should all be jellyfish and allow agendas to walk all over us, right? It is important that we are confident enough to stand in our truth and advocate for what feels important to us, right? And to align our actions with that. But it's a very thin edge between allowing our ego to get out of control and to start making it our purpose to defeat something that's bad or wrong. Because our purpose is so important to us, and what we start to focus on, we really feed. And when we make it our purpose to defeat badness in the world, we sort of perpetuate badness to keep defeating. This is the point. Our purpose is so important to us. If it's your purpose to fight against climate destroyers, you will always find climate destroyers to fight against, right? If so pick any other example, it's the same, right? So I caution you about making it very purposeful to you to fight against something that's wrong, and to rather make it much more purposeful to advocate for what feels beneficial. And if that means standing up to what you perceive as against what you feel purposeful and beneficial, then be willing to do that, but be willing to do it from a real space of love rather than from a space of fear, hatred, or fight. Sorry, Adam, I'll be missing your comments, but I'm going to go back to the start here, and then I'll read them through. I've been feeling a call getting louder around bringing back the unions that have been decimated and collaborating in socialist containers to get new things cooking. But the rightness and the pride, reactive, prickly vibes around socialist groups have been incredibly toxic in my experience. Yeah, so I talked a little bit about socialism the other day. I think it was when I was talking to Georgie on her radio show, which I'm still not sure if that replay is up yet. But yeah, I will talk a little bit about this. I too feel that solidarity right now and bringing together organizations that help protect the rights of the smaller common people, the workers, is very important, right? So here's what I yes, thanks, Adam. Good call on noticing the fight against wrong programs. But here's what I feel around, socialist and socialism. The concept is fantastic, right? I align myself, or I consider myself more socialist in my political mindset, right? But socialism has been so tainted, recently, because, socialism basically puts social order, social comfort, social fairness as the highest ideal of a society, whereas capitalism puts financial gain, right, money, at the highest form of a society, right? So for me, it's a no-brainer. I am much more interested in social equality, social fairness and happiness, right? Social good society, right? I put society, social society, as the highest form of what our governance should be aiming to achieve, as opposed to finance, capital, right? Building capital, build economic growth. I don't see economic growth as so important. I'm not against economic growth. I don't want to keep us in some sort of static form where there's no improvement in technology or in different things, right? I appreciate what capitalism brings in form of driving innovation, etc., etc. But I don't put the gain of money higher than the gain of social order, right? And social happiness, really. Happiness is my biggest driver. So in terms of the foundations of capitalist versus socialist, it's a no-brainer for me that I'm more socialist in my mindset than capitalist. Unfortunately, socialism has been railroaded by communism, fascism, right? Where in order to have a high degree of social fairness, that there is some sort of loss of freedom. And I don't see why that has to be the case, right? Because I can also see that in many regards, that capitalism also leads to a huge loss of freedom as well, as people become a slave to money, right? So I don't see why people have to become a slave to the state in order to have a good, socially healthy society, right? Under a socialist agenda whereby we work together to make decisions that better our society, as opposed to just working together to make decisions that makes more money. So, and I understand this idea in the capitalist mindset that the free market will lead us towards the happiness. Well, we've seen that we don't have a free market because we've got globalization and corporatization, which has railroaded our capitalism. So it's not a fair playing field, right? The small guys who are trying to work hard to get ahead, right, don't have a show, because basically the larger corporations are keeping us enslaved, and the money system and the tax system, nothing's fair at the moment in our capitalist societies. So anyway, it's rather interesting. I think we're basically effed up on both sides of the equation right now. Capitalism is incredibly compromised, and so is socialism, incredibly compromised. And so either way, at the moment, the human spirit is not getting an opportunity to express itself and find true happiness in a purposeful way on the planet. So they are boxed into labels, and they're boxed into history as well. And so a lot of people, and then of course all the capitalists think that socialists is evil, and all the socialists think that capitalism is evil. So then they spend most of their time fighting against what they don't want rather than advocating for what they do, right? Again, the society has been divided and thus conquered. And the very small proportion of people that sit right on the top of our current pyramid of society are reaping the energy in all ways, right? They're basically feeding off the fight. They're feeding off the division. They can't really lose at the moment. They don't care whether the capitalists are in or the socialists are in. They're reaping every way. They like to keep turning it over. They like to keep generating wars. They make their most of their energy through aggression and fear and guilt. And wars are great for producing all of that. So they love that. And they love creating conflict. So what's really important for us, I feel, as a society, as a community, as an individual, is to get out a fight and to really find love in our hearts, and to be still able to advocate for what we desire, to be willing to stand in truth, with confidence, right? To find confidence without aggression. This is a big one, right? How do we stand in confidence without getting aggressive, without needing to prove our point? How can we just stand so confident in ourselves that we don't need to prove anything? We can just say, no, we're not accepting what you are currently dishing out, without having to fight them, without having to justify, without having to prove that they are wrong. We don't need to prove that they are wrong. We just feel in our heart that what is currently happening is not in alignment with our highest truth. And that's enough. That's enough for us to say, no, this won't take it. I think I saw on Facebook this morning, this quote from Rosa Parks, the courageous black woman who back in whatever year it was, I think it was only the 60s. It wasn't that long ago. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was the 50s. But anyway, when segregation was still happening and she was supposed to be at the back of the bus and she didn't, she sat at the front of the bus and people got on, basically she was told to go to the back of the bus and she simply said no. She simply said no. That is non-compliance, and that is what is required today. We don't need to justify. We just need to say no to what doesn't sit well. So, and it's interesting, right? Because we've been, so indoctrinated into needing to prove everything with facts. And there's plenty of facts to align with that's a messenger. Right, it's gone away, thankfully. Yeah. So I don't know. I've sort of chewed my half an hour. Did I get there though, Adam? So yeah, I agree. That's right. Adam said, talking about being called to really look back at the benefit that was in these organizations, these union organizations, where the common workers basically had the solidarity, right? They worked together to achieve results. They stood up to the capitalist movement that basically wanted to keep reducing their rights, their opportunities as workers in order to increase profit margins, right? So you're welcome, Sylvia. I think I have stirred up a bit of I've opened the can of worms, that's for sure. So yeah, I agree. I definitely agree that there is place for many of us, and it doesn't need to be around our employment either. I think community organizations right now that come together to advocate for the right of various members of the community that feel aligned with that. The trick, if you like, or the danger, or the challenge in this is to come together in organizations without promoting division, right? And we saw this, unfortunately, in the trade union organizations, that quite often the unions battled against each other, right? They fought against each other as to, who had the right of, who was calling the shots on any particular workplace, et cetera, right? And so the unions didn't quite find solidarity amongst themselves. And I think that is always the danger when we come together in groups, is the human ego loves to make your group the right group. We see it in religious organizations. Like, look at all the different Christian religions as an example, or look at all of the different Islamic sects and also in Hinduism, right, and in Buddhism, right. There's all of these different subgroups within the same religion, and quite often we find a significant amount of infighting around people who are basically of the same opinion but slightly different, and have formed different groups based on the slight differences, and now fight against each other rather than coming together in the beauty of their religion and promoting their religion. Not that their religion is right, but just promoting the beauty of their religion instead of fighting amongst themselves around their small differences. The human mind just gets caught up in the fine print, right, and misses out on the beauty that's available in the larger picture of what is. So when it comes to, and again, just like another example of that, there is, we are struggling a little bit with that here in New Zealand in the various freedom groups. It's not pronounced, but it's still there, right? Different, and it has been I've been quite pleased with how little of it's there, but you can still sense it somewhat. We're having a big rally tomorrow, and one of the groups that's promoting freedom has a little bit more of a spiritual bent, and it's a left of field spiritual bent, and many people don't really like the character that is the leader of that group, but yet they're involved in the freedom movement. And so, how do we come together and see past our smaller differences and advocate for the larger outcome, which is basically, to promote freedom and to expand out of the potential for these mandates to get even further entrenched, right? But yet there's it's hard for us humans to come together when there's other parts of other groups that we don't particularly align with. We don't particularly like an aspect that they are professing to, and yet we have a common goal. So tolerance, right, acceptance and allowance is what we're getting the opportunity to work with right now as we come together in our smaller community groups, coming together to advocate for the larger outcome. So we're going to get a lot of opportunities for that as we move into this new age of collaboration, right? This new divine feminine energy coming in onto this planet is going to give us a lot of opportunity to see past division, to work through division, and to find collaboration despite us noticing and being aware of differences. We're allowed to have differences. We're supposed to have differences. We are all unique. It doesn't matter how small a collective might be, right? It doesn't matter, just two people who might be very aligned with each other and very committed to each other. We'll still have differences, and that is appropriate, right? That we can work with our differences. That's what makes us strong. It is our diversity, right? It's our diversity that makes any collective strong, because a collective that's homogenous, a collective that's all the same, is fragile. We see this in agriculture, for example, right? When we create an agricultural whatever we call that thing, right? When everything is the same, everything is of the same genetics, we are very, very susceptible to a disease wiping out the whole friggin' lot. And it's the same with human thinking and human collective, right? If we're all too similar, then it's easy for one doubt to basically knock us all over. But when we have diversity, we have more strength. And so it is in the monoculture. Thank you, Anne. So yeah, we don't want a monoculture. We don't want our collectives to be imposed upon a singular belief system. We want to include the diversity. We want to come together honoring the diversity and still having commonality. So seeing the unity in our community without losing the beauty of diversity, right? And so that we can hold acceptance and allowance for the outliers, especially, right, on the edge of the bell curve. And many of you and I are on the edge of the bell curve when we look at society as a whole, right? We're not in normality with our spiritual beliefs or our energetic beliefs or even our sensitivity. We have found ourselves in the very edges of the bell curve when we look at any particular collective, right? Any group of beings, there's this bell curve which we see when you look at any particular characteristic. And for you and I here who get drawn to these sorts of conversations are generally outliers out of normality for a lot of our measurable, not even measurable, but anyway, qualities. So we understand, and for a long time it has felt that we don't belong, but truly you are bringing a great deal of strength right now to our societies and communities, right? Because you do have the diversity that brings a level of stability when hard times are upon us, right? When the plague comes through, it's the outliers that have the genetic material that help the species survive. And it's that's an analogy of it, but it's not like a plague, and it's not like the whole species is going to be wiped out, and it's not about your genetics right now. It's about your energy, right? You are containing some energies that are stabilizing for this planet, even though you haven't really been accepted into the society normality. Now is the time for you to really shine bright, despite the fact that you may still not be feeling so appreciated in society. But it is your light that is going to help society come through this challenge. The freaks suddenly become valuable. Exactly, Anne. And it's true. And they might not recognize it yet, but I truly believe that over the next couple of decades, the quote-unquote freaks are going to become very much more appreciated on this planet as pathways to evolution, right? To help the collective progress through into this more divinely feminine guided society. Anyway, friends, that's more than enough for today. Much love to you. I will be back next week. We do have this weekend, I can't remember if it's Saturday or Sunday my time. I think it's actually Sunday afternoon my time. We have the full moon. So I will be doing a call for the full moon. I think New Zealand time, I think it's about 5 o'clock Sunday afternoon. I might have got that slightly wrong. It might actually be Saturday for all I know. I think it's the 19th, my time. But anyway, I will put a proper notification up. It's still a few days away. So yeah, just be aware of that. And as we sort of approach the full moon, it might be quite intense. There is some quite intense astrology around today, these next 24 hours, the 15th. It's already the 15th here in New Zealand. I know it's not there yet. The bug just landed on me in the Americas and Europe, but there's a lot of conjecture, a lot of talk. I saw a bit of stuff from Pam Gregory, etc., around how intense this astrology is, and December itself is intense astrologically as well as being intense socially anyway, with Christmas and the holidays, where I started talking at the start of this call. So be an allowance that it's an intense time on the planet, and don't be too harshly critical of yourself for how you handle this intensity. Trust that you're not supposed to look perfect. It's going to get a bit messy. Keep your chin up. Keep breathing deep. Relax as best you can. Remember that you are loved and supported, and we will all get through this. Bye for now, friends. Much love.